Independence Associates is a not-for-profit independent living center located in East Bridgewater, Massachusetts, committed to producing content that is inclusive of everyone, including persons with disabilities. If you would like to help out in front of or behind the camera, please contact social@iacil.org, or to support our efforts, consider donating at iacil.org/donate.
Everybody, and welcome to another episode of IA's Jock Talk. We are privileged to be joined by Tony Massarotti of 98.5 The Sports Hub. Tony, how are you?
I'm good, Brian. How you doing, buddy?
Good. So we want to start off by giving you a chance to let the world know how you became the Tony Mazz that we know and love.
How I became the person that everybody loves to hate? Is that the idea?
Well, you said it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily my opinion, but we can go with it.
So, look, I've been really, like many of us who work in Boston and, you know, or who do what we do in general, I've been really, really lucky and really fortunate. Had some good people looking out for me early on in the process. But from I grew up in Watertown and Waltham. My family moved when I was 13. So I have a foot in both towns. And I won't bore you with too many of the details other than tell you I'm a lifelong Boston sports fan, grew up here and followed the teams growing up. And, started, interning at Channel 5 when I was in high school, had an interest in, cable TV and things like that. And then started writing when I was in college for the school paper. And long story short, my first job out of college was answering phones at the Boston Herald, taking high school scores. And, I was a college graduate at the time, but the Herald had an internship program. And one of the interns there at the time was Mike Felger. So, this goes back really 30 years or so. Mike and I have known one another. And, Paul Perillo was another one who was there at that time. So it was a good group of people. Steve Conroy, who covers the Bruins now for the Herald, and just little by little over the years started evolving, and eventually covered some college basketball, spent a good number of years on the Red Sox beat. And the one thing I would tell you that I think was more important than anything over those years is the teams that we covered won. So the Red Sox were a team that hadn't won a World Series in almost 100 years. As we all know. And in the 15 years I covered them, they went to the playoffs 9 times. They won a couple of World Series. And when you're around good teams, you're going to get exposure both locally and nationally. And so that was a big thing for me in terms of, people seeing my work and things like that, and started doing some radio here on WEEI. And, the Sports Hub began, and lo and behold, they wanted to put me with Mike. They wanted Mike for a show. They needed someone to put with him, and I was the guy. So that's the short version of the story. But it's been a lot of fun, and we've been really lucky. There's been no period like it in modern sports history.
Well, let me just point out that, for those fans of ours, you guys are the number one afternoon drive show in Boston, and rightfully so. But, I have to start with the tough questions because I wouldn't be doing my job. I am one of those people that called for Danny Ainge's job.
Yep.
I know it's not really a popular opinion, but I wrote in my blog recently that draft picks are the equivalent of Bitcoin, and who cares what Bitcoin does?
Yeah, right.
We're in a time where we need to win, and I'm not sure Peyton Pritchard does it, and they need to do something with $28.5 million in the trade exception. So what are we waiting for?
Well, so look, it's a reasonable opinion. There's nothing wrong with having that. And I would tell you that, I just look at the NBA differently than I do a lot of other leagues. Cause I think in the NBA, 9 times out of 10, it really comes down to who's got the best player and, or the best combination of, 2 of the best 3 or something like that. And to win a championship, you typically have to have one of the top 5 players in the league. I mean, it's not a coincidence, right? When you look at championships over the last however many years, they've been won by LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, maybe Steph Curry, if you include him, but really Kevin Durant. So most of the championships are won by guys who are in the top 5 players in the league. So the question is, how do you get one of those guys? So I don't hold Ainge as accountable as you do. I think that, what you have to do is just increase your chances to get those players. Cause I think that league really is largely about getting a winning lottery ticket. And, it sucks in a lot of levels that it boils down to that, but I think that's really what it is.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I'm just stunned by your hot take here. Just what happened with the Tatum trade? I mean, everybody was going to take Markelle Fultz, and Ainge is able to trade down to 3 and get the best player and an extra pick. And right before that, Jaylen Brown, and right before that, Marcus Smart. I'm just shocked by that.
See, so you're more upset with Bryan?
Yeah, I'm upset with Bryan.
Yeah.
Defend yourself.
See, the problem is, Mazz, any other GM in this town wouldn't survive one championship in, 17 years in now?
Yeah, right.
And you can't be a middling franchise in the NBA. Now, this brings me to my next argument, because I've heard, another friend of ours, Tim McCone, argue that, James Harden's a top 5 player, but you don't want him anywhere near the Celtics. Well, which one is it? Tomato. I mean, he's a top 5 player, but then we need top 5 talent. So what are we doing?
Okay. So look, on Harden, I hear what you're saying. I don't like Harden. And I think that, to me, there's sort of I get a lot of grief on the show, as you know, because they say I hate every player in the NBA. I don't think any of them are good enough. And the problem is that I think that there's about 5, maybe 10, not even 10, but really 5 or 6 that I think can be, what I would call starring actors, that alpha on a championship team. So again, we're talking LeBron, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, and we could get the list out and go through and actually count backwards and say how many championships in the last, let's say, since LeBron has come into the league. Okay. So in the last 15 years, how many titles have won by LeBron, Kawhi Leonard, Tim Duncan, who am I leaving out? Kevin Durant. Durant had 2. LeBron's got, what's LeBron got now? 4. Yeah, that's 6. So we're already getting up to, half of them, and we've only gotten through 2 players. So I just think that it is, it's a problem in that league and a problem with that sport because one player can dominate so much. So here's the good news for you. Okay. Let me tell you what the good news is. That Jayson Tatum looks like he has a chance to be one of those guys. And Jaylen Brown is improving more every time you watch him. Every time he comes into a season, I look at Jaylen Brown and I say, I never thought he'd be this good. And I'm saying that again this year. I think he's been dynamite and he's doing things that, he wasn't doing before. He's starting to see more passing. He's got more game sense. He's shooting with greater consistency. I'd like to see the free throw shooting stabilize for Jaylen Brown, and become a consistently good free throw shooter. And, so you look at him all the way around, you say, this guy he's really starting to figure it out. Like the other thing I noticed now is he'll shoot off the dribble, which he wasn't necessarily doing before. So, these guys, this is his 5th year in the league. It's Tatum's 4th. So, typically in theory, they're still a couple of years away from hitting the first years of their peak. And when that happens, you could have the best 2-man combo in the league. And then it's easy to fill in around guys like that. Now you're filling specific needs and you're going out and getting a big man or a point guard or a 3-and-D guy, and you can fill specific needs more easily. Finding those superstars is the hard part.
Right.
Yeah, Maz, you named, like LeBron and KD and Kawhi. I mean, these are all-time players. I mean, when we go into basketball history, when these guys are done, they're going to be top 10, top 15 probably of all time. And here we sit on the Celtics with a 23-year-old and a 24-year-old who are, A players, not maybe A plus yet like those guys, but with a chance to get there. We have two really great foundational pieces. And, Danny Ainge is responsible for that. Brown was not a popular pick at 3, and everybody was saying take Fultz at 1, and he traded down and he got Tatum, the best guy. I mean, to me, that buys this guy a lot of time. He should not have any sort of fear for his job, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Bryan, you don't think so?
No. It's a result of business, Tony. You know that. We all know that. And the thing is Boston fan base is like nothing anywhere else. We're impatient. We're passionate almost to a fault. I mean, we all have a little Tommy Heinz in us. God rest his soul. We all want the very best. But I just think Danny, he does a good job. But again, collecting Bitcoin, what's it doing for us?
I'll tell you, I like the Bitcoin line. I'm going to steal that.
Go ahead.
No, I am. I'm going to steal it. So, all right. So let me ask you this, because I think this is a fair criticism. They brought Garnett in. They won one title. Okay, they should have won more with Garnett. But now the difference is that he's drafted 2 players at the top of the draft. Right. I mean, they were both number 3, but Tatum, if you believe the Celtics was going to be number 1, they were going to take him number 1. But regardless, okay, I don't really include Smart. Smart was a number 6 pick, and Smart's a good player, but he's more of a role player than the other 2 are. The other 2 feel like, as Ryan said, centerpiece type of players. So if Ainge builds a championship team, a multi-championship team with these 2 guys, does your opinion change?
Yeah, slightly. I mean, but again, it's all based on timeline. And for me, again, I go back to the Bitcoin thing. Nobody knows about it. And we can collect draft picks for 7 more years if we want. But what's it going to do? Look no further than what draft picks do for, in Bill we trust. Down the road a bit. But if they win a championship, fine. Because then the results will speak for itself. I just think, in comparison, no other GM would have the latitude that Danny Ainge appears to have had.
So look, again, yeah, you're probably right about that. And I think the sport's got a lot to do with it. But here's where I differ from you, is that if he were to win 2 or 3 more titles, that's why I said multi-champion.
Yeah.
Okay. If this group, this pairing can go on and be centerpiece for a couple of championships, I think we look at Ainge differently. I think we then look at him the second time and say, well, he did this one differently than they did the first one. In the first one, they had Al Jefferson, who was the 13th pick or something. I don't even remember where they took Jefferson.
I think it was like 15th or something.
Okay, it was the middle of the first round.
Yeah.
And so, they took that guy, they made a bunch of other picks, and then they traded $1 million assets for Kevin Garnett. Okay. They actually ended up getting Ray Allen with what was the equivalent of the 5th pick, right? Because I think they took Jeff Green and traded him to Seattle.
Yep.
For Ray Allen. So, they only had 1 top 5 pick, and they were able to build it with veteran players, largely because they had Paul Pierce. This would be totally different. This is really starting from scratch with a couple of high draft picks. And, because they didn't win with Hayward, they didn't win with Al Horford. And if he's able to do it this way and give them some sort of extended run at a championship, then, to me, that changes the whole narrative on his career.
Well, mark down the tape, because we'll see in about a year and a half. We'll come back and do this, and we'll prove that Mazz is smarter than both of us, Ryan. So,
or dumber.
Well, no.
Yeah. Or
I
don't.
mean, just to extrapolate on Mazz's point a little bit, I think like there's LeBron and there's Kawhi and there's KD, and those are the primo guys. And we just don't have one of those guys. And, you know, if you don't have one of those, you have to take a different tact. And that's, I believe, what Danny Ainge has done, unable to get KD. I mean, that would have been amazing. But without the ability to get one of those guys and to build organically and to hit on first round picks again and again, I mean, that's the way to do it.
Right. But, you know, that segues into my next sport topic, which is the disaster that's going on in Foxboro. Please. I'm dating myself here, but I'm old enough to remember the days of Drew Bledsoe. And you know what, Mazz? For this year, I would have rather had Bledsoe back there than Cam Newton. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, here's my thing, and then I'll let you rant after this. I don't understand it. To me, Cam Newton represents Malcolm Butler 2.0. We're never going to know the answer because, quite frankly, as smart as he is, Bill's just as arrogant to the rest of us and thinks he's got it figured out.
Well, yeah. So look, again, the quarterback thing, I'm mystified as much as anyone else is. Like how the whole thing ended up with Cam Newton after Tom Brady, to me is really kind of embarrassing. So I look at the whole way that thing evolved, and I say they really weren't prepared for it. Now look at the beginning of it. You could say that Belichick was prepared. He had Garoppolo. He had a plan in place. The owner overruled him. And I think that you'd be right to say that. I think Bill has a reason to be upset about that. I'd also say that was 3 years ago. And okay, how much longer is it going to take before you start putting a legitimate effort into finding a real quarterback? So they did. They approached it in a very cavalier manner. It was arrogant. It was beyond arrogant to do it the way they did it. And now they've fallen on their faces. The worst part is that they're no closer to a solution. Stidham isn't the answer. They have a million holes on the roster. It's almost like they're an expansion franchise, really. Like, that's what it feels like. It's that bad. I mean, you tell me, but that's how it feels to me.
They're going back to the days when Zoe was the quarterback. Sorry. But, you know, it doesn't make sense to me, Maz. And the thing is if you go back to when Parcells, love him or hate him, stated, you know, you can't cook the dinner if they won't let you buy the groceries. And I find it ironic that a guy who committed in Robert Kraft to not getting involved in football operations chose to get involved with Jimmy G and ultimately jettisoning the best guy that Boston sports has ever seen out of town. And I'm not even a Brady guy, which you can kill me for that later on. But I just don't see why you're going to get involved to get Garoppolo out of here, but you won't get involved to keep the guy here.
Well, yeah, look, again, you couldn't be more right about it, really. And think about it. So, you know, the Garoppolo was traded late in the 17 season, right? Do I have my timeline right here?
Yeah.
So, okay. So Garoppolo was traded late in the 17 season, which is his fourth year in New England. That following spring, after they lost the Super Bowl to the Eagles, Brady told Kraft he wanted out. So now think about it. Think about how Kraft felt about that whole scenario. Brady's upset that he hasn't gotten a contract extension. Jimmy Garoppolo is still in New England. Brady is complaining to the owner about the fact that Bill's going to ship him out of town, and why is Garoppolo still around? And you know, and then what happens is they trade Garoppolo, and Brady says 3 months later, anyway, well, I still want out. Like I want to leave. So Kraft at that point has got to be pissed. And look, I got no way to prove this. I'm just telling you that it's a human reaction. I'd be willing to bet that Robert Kraft, after all of that, said we shouldn't have traded Garoppolo. Shouldn't have done it. It was a mistake. And so now look, we can debate whether or not Garoppolo was the answer. Okay. Belichick thought he was. Yeah. Belichick drafted him, developed him, and got him to a point where he thought it could work. And the owner overruled him, and the Patriots haven't recovered. I mean, now look, they won one more Super Bowl as they in 2018. I'm not saying that was insignificant, but if they end up being in this rut where they don't win a championship for how long, or they can't win divisions now, or can't make the playoffs, and that happens for any extended period of time, we're going to look back at that decision and say that was a massive mistake.
Well, the problem I have is I could throw the ball better than Cam Newton could this year, and that's bad because I can't throw a ball any more than I can, walk 2 feet in front of my face. But I just don't like it, Maz, because we've been spoiled the last 20 years. I know it. Ryan knows it. You know it. But again, Boston sports, the atmosphere is like nothing else.
Yo, we're totally spoiled completely, but that doesn't mean you don't have a right to be upset this year either. The product that was put on the field wasn't good. And, and they didn't get better as the season went along. In fact, I'd argue by the end of it, they were worse in a lot of ways. And the defense, it felt to me like certainly got worse. And I just think overall, the state of the franchise worsened. They're in worse shape now than they were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of 01 or that offseason going into 01. You don't know what you're going to get. And honestly, if they take another suggestion of Michael Lombardi in the draft, I quit. I'm out. I'm out of the business because DK Metcalf stinks compared to N'Keal Harry. I mean, come on. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, remember, if you take DK Metcalf over N'Keal Harry, you're an idiot.
Yeah, well, apparently I'm the biggest idiot in town.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, wow, what a mistake, right?
Wow. But, before you go, Mez, we wouldn't be a sports show if we didn't talk a little baseball with you. And
of course.
Fortunately, I think baseball's gone for those of us that love it. The Red Sox did one thing right this offseason, and that was hiring Bianca Smith, who's the first, African-American coach in the minor league system. But other than that, what did they get? The wrong Hunter Renfroe? I mean, it's Johnny Gomes 2.0 as far as I'm concerned.
So that's a good analogy. No, it's a good analogy. Yeah, I'm worried about it. I mean, we all know that the biggest need they have there is the pitching staff. And so, there hasn't been any upgrade there. And I don't know how all that's going to shake out. Although I will say overall in their defense, there hasn't been a lot of movement in baseball, period. So it's not like anything's happening anywhere. And I think you're going to see a lot of pieces shake out here in the next couple of months. If there is not a work stoppage of some sort first, because I think there is a chance that we're not going to have baseball for the start of the year. We'll see how that goes. But look, it's been, they're in a bad place right now. And in fact, I think the Celtics might be closest to a championship, really, when you look at it. So, and you're ready to fire the GM. So,
hey,
so how close can they be if heads are going to roll in the Bjorkland house?
Well, you're right about that. And kudos for pronouncing my last name right, because 1 in 15 Americans can do that on the first try. But I just don't understand what happened to baseball, because I was talking to Ryan about this earlier, leading up to this. That 03 offseason, when you had A-Rod, one step in Boston, one step in steroid land, that was exciting. That was nonstop action. I mean, ESPN used to have a show called The Hot List, and every day they would go through baseball stuff. And now it's like, who cares? I hate to say it because it's a wonderful sport, but who cares?
Oh, listen, the overall state of the game, the direction it's gone has been really, disheartening or demoralizing. I don't like the way the game's played, which, if you listen to the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I say it in much stronger terms than that most of the time. Ryan, are you a baseball fan?
Yeah, I am.
No, sorry. I said Ryan.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Brian, I know you're a fan of everything, I gather. I can pick that up right away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just look at, again, I used to love the game. I used to love the sport and I still do, but I just wish that they could go back to something closer to what was a crisper version of the game than what they have now. Cause now it just feels to me like they're all just, playing home run derby and swinging from their asses. It feels like softball to me, really is what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even take it a step further and say beer league softball.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's bad.
Next thing you know, they'll be paying the players in Bitcoin.
See, I told you it's the going trend these days, but nobody knows anything about it, so nobody cares. And I know you're gonna disagree with me on this, and that's okay. But Zdeno Charo, he needed to go, but the way they handled it, not even so much with him, but just dragging it out was ridiculous. That's all I'm saying. Yes, the guy was a turnstile on the ice the last year and a half.
Yes.
So what? But, now you got to face the Capitals 8 times a year with the realigned divisions and everything else. And I just think he deserved a little bit better, and I know Felger's probably going to kill me on that later on, but hey, we'll see.
Yeah, so I want to see how Chara defends Marchand if it comes to that, because I think Marchand will have him spinning in circles. So, now look, again, I love Chara. He's hard not to like, total pro. And I'm not sure that they strung him along as much as maybe he strung them along. I think he was waiting for something better to come along. I think they were pretty clear with him from the beginning that, we're going to change things up here. Because remember, when the Bruins were playing Tampa Bay in the bubble, the last game that the Bruins played, the announcers said in the broadcast, this could be Zdeno. This is probably Zdeno Chara's last game with the Bruins. He might play in the league, but if he does, it's not going to be with Boston. And so I think they all knew the score back then. And he was just waiting to see if maybe something better came along, or there was, the Bruins changed their minds and it didn't happen. So, I mean, look, it's always frustrating when a guy who you'd consider to be an iconic player, and that's what he is, doesn't finish with the team that you think he should finish with. But most of the time, that's how it happens now. It doesn't happen anymore with, a guy retiring and getting the farewell and the parade and the fairy tale story. That just, it doesn't typically get on that way anymore. And I don't have, it's hard to say that you have more respect for an athlete than anyone should have for Zdeno Chara in terms of how he approached it. Brady was a great winner, but in terms of commitment, effort, being a leader and a teammate year in and year out, you're not going to find many guys better than Chara.
No, the commitment with Brady died when he married Giselle, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But thank you, Mazz. Thank you for doing this.
Can I ask one quick question, Brian?
Of course, yeah.
All right. So I just wanted to ask, so like Brian, I grew up listening to EEI, and EEI was a juggernaut. And I used to listen to you all the time, on the big show. And
sure.
And, the Sports Hub came along, and it wasn't the first station to challenge EEI. And I kind of had I think it had some more money behind it. So I was still skeptical because I think back in 2004 and in the mid 2000s, EEI was the number one sports radio station in America.
Yeah.
Now you guys have come in and you've taken Boston sports, over. I mean, what has been the secret? What is the secret sauce that has allowed the Sports Hub to be so great?
Yeah. So I wish I could give you a simple answer and say, it was this. And I think at the end of the day, I think it was a lot of factors. And, I suspect Mike would say that it's not something we talk about a lot. I'm not trying to come off as falsely modest or anything of the like. I think you kind of show up, you do the job the way you do it with your intensity, your personality, and your attitude. And you try to be, you try to take those parts of you that are, strongest or most, you try to take the sports fan in you, right? The real core sports fan, and just turn up the volume. And so, but I would say the big thing really more than anything is luck. Like, I do think there's a lot of luck to it. You got to be in a town that loves sports with good teams and, fans that, and listeners that actually want to listen to you. So that's probably the biggest thing. I don't, beyond that, there, look, there are some things we think work and some things we don't. But I think it's all related to, at the end of the day, it's all related to having good teams and good fans. If there aren't good teams and good fans, nobody cares, right? And so that's really the biggest part of it. And, as far as the shift, I don't, maybe people were just ready for something different. I don't, and maybe we were just right place at right time. Like, I try not to get too scientific about it. Cause then you start overthinking it, right? And so you just do what you do and hope that, you hope that it works. And again, we've been lucky.
I mean, from my perspective, it seems way more organic than traditional sports radio, because when I listen to you guys and when I watch you guys, it's almost like watching three of my buddies sit at a bar and, talk smack all day long.
Well, I'll tell you, look, we try to have genuine conversations. Like, we don't script stuff. And, a lot of people say, well, you're taking this side just to make, we don't really do it that way. I mean, a lot of times Mike and I come from the same vantage point. We both grew up, as I said, as Herald guys. So we grew up in a tabloid newsroom and, we both like sports. So, even though he covered football and, hockey, and I covered baseball and some basketball, I've always liked all the teams in town. I've always followed them, certainly when they've been worthwhile. So, there was a period there where the Bruins were really bad, where I kind of checked out on them. But I would say overall, it's, we both like sports. And so we go in with topics and ideas, but we don't script the conversation. We try to make it real and just kind of, go from there and see where it takes us. But, I mean, we got to have some sort of blueprint. We call it a rundown. It's like an outline for what we're going to talk about on the show. And we know that we'll go from this topic to that topic at a certain time. But, in terms of where specifically the conversation goes, we don't really, we don't do it that, not to that level.
Well, I mean, I guess my last real question is, what advice do you have for anybody that's getting, trying to get into this business? I mean, certainly anybody, but especially people with disabilities, because look, I'll say it, I think there's a space for us in the industry, especially if you're as knowledgeable as Ryan and I are. And we have, consumers that we work with that want to do production and all that stuff. And, what advice would you have?
Well, first of all, and again, I don't say this half-heartedly. I give you guys a lot of credit. Okay. I mean, it's, you live in an age now where you're able to put yourself out there, and a lot of people still wouldn't do that, and you do. So good for both of you. And because it's not easy. And so I would tell you that I think the big thing is to just keep at it. Keep, the reps mean everything. It's all about the reps. And I don't know, again, I don't want to get overly philosophical with you, but there was the book that Malcolm Gladwell wrote, Outliers, where he talks about people putting in their 10,000 hours in areas where they were able to have success. Now, he did it with people like Bill Gates and, you're talking about some of the great achievers, high achievers on the planet. But I think, for the dumber versions of us, like people like me, maybe there's a 2,000 hours or there's a 4,000 hours. I don't know. I mean, but I do subscribe to the theory that, practice like you play and practice as much as you can. And so any reps, always help. You get more and more comfortable in front of a microphone or in front of a, a coach or an athlete that you have to interview, and then it becomes at a certain stage, it becomes second nature. And then you hope someone notices and you're in the right place at the right time, So, but look at, you're doing great. And I don't know the extent of your background but obviously you've had your own challenges. And so just keep hacking away. You're doing great.
Thanks, Mazz. CP is not a challenge. It's just another little avenue I had to take. That's all.
Yeah. So, have you met or do you know John Miller of WBZ Radio?
I haven't met him yet. We've met a lot of the same people because I know when you and I were setting this up, we had gone back and forth a little bit, and I graduated Bridgewater State and I got a degree in coaching. So, and my cousin's wife used to work for Blue Sky Sports and Entertainment. So
yep.
I know a lot of the same people.
Oh, great. Yeah. So Johnny's been in the business a long time.
Yeah.
And how do you and Ryan know each other?
Ryan's actually my supervisor. He works with me at Independence Associates.
Okay. All right. Fabulous. Wow. That's great.
He busts my chops all day long about being nothing but a sports fanatic.
Yeah. Well, you probably deserve it.
Guys on my 24 hours a day.
And Ryan, you want to get in the business too, or no?
Not really. I mean, I'm a fan of the business. I follow sports very closely, but I'm pretty happy what I'm doing right now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Well, listen, just like I said, it's all about the reps, and and the good advantage the good thing now, and the advantage that, people of, I always say the next generation. I'm obviously a little older than you guys, I think. So the internet's a huge thing. I mean, it's a huge opportunity in that you don't need, when I was first starting, you had to do it at a cable access channel in town. And, there just weren't as many opportunities. Now you just fire up your computer or turn on your phone and you want to go Instagram Live, and here we go. Right. And, maybe the audience isn't all that big at the start, but it really doesn't matter if the audience is 10 or 10,000. That the size of if someone's watching, you tend to put a certain pressure on yourself, period. And and if you can get used to that and get comfortable with that, then it's not, it becomes a lot easier and you'll get better at it.
Well, I got to tell you, this one, we've done a couple of these now, and I think this is the smoothest one I've had in terms of, being ready to go without cue cards and all that stuff. So we're getting there.
Well, Brian, I thought you were going to say it was the smoothest one you had because of the guest.
Well, that too, man. I mean, hey, my stepmother's full-blood Italian, so I understand, the Italian culture, they work hard and great food and great people.
And we can cook. That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
I've had more manicottis on Christmas now the last 5 years than I've ever had in my life.
Oh, no, you're not living until you have pasta on Thanksgiving. That's the way it works.
I have had that too.
Yeah.
So, but thank you, Mazz. And, thank you for all of our listeners and, the people that watch us on YouTube and pay attention to the clicks and all that stuff. Thank you. And if you need help, if you're a person with a disability and you want to get involved, reach out to us at iacil.org. We're a nonprofit organization. Follow the link that Ryan will put up and look for us down the road.
Hey, Brian, listen, be well, okay? You take care of yourself. And Ryan, pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
Mazz, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, please email, reach out anytime. All right.
It's easier talking to you than it is dealing with Felger.
I would say the same to you.
Yeah.
Attention Massachusetts young adults. East Bridgewater-based nonprofit Independence Associates wants to work with you on employment, life, and social skills 100% free of charge over Zoom. Click Get Started at iacil.org. Thank you so much to Tony Massarotti from the Sports Hub for joining us here. Brian, what did you think of the interview?
I thought it went well. Certainly, he's going to apparently steal my Bitcoin gig, but you know, hey, notoriety starts small, and who knows?
There you go.
Um,
Maybe he'll give
but
you a shout out.
hopefully, I don't care about notoriety. I just, as a sports fan, as a passionate, almost delusional Boston sports fan, I really do think the Bitcoin analogy is perfect. Now, whether Danny Ainge truly deserves to lose his job, I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? You were calling for his head.
Well, but like Maz said, he talks some sense into me, and if they win a championship or two, then things change.
I mean, it's hard to win, especially with guys like LeBron and KD and Kawhi in the league, and we don't, and now Giannis. I mean, we don't have one of those guys. We have two really, really good young players in Tatum and Brown who could turn into those guys. It's not impossible. I mean, it's not likely just because there's so few of those guys, but we have two people that could really be something. And Ainge has put us into a position to now contend for the next 5 years. And we're looking at the Patriots right now and the Red Sox, and you see how hard it is to keep these things going, especially the Patriots in the cap sport. I'm very happy with Danny Ainge. I have zero issues with what he's done. Hanging on to the trade exception. I mean, you don't want to just make a trade to make a trade. I mean, do you want LaMarcus Aldridge, or do you want to wait and see if something better can come?
No, if something better can come, then obviously that's the route to go. And but I honestly, and you're gonna crucify me for this, I know this already, but I think that if Oklahoma City dies out this year, I wouldn't mind bringing Al Horford back. And I say that because I'm not sold on Time Lord. Daniel Tice is a nice complementary piece, but the biggest asset that Al Horford brings you is veteran leadership in the locker room, and you saw that missing that after that year, that atrocious year with the artist formerly known as Kyrie Irving. But I think that Al Horford would be good for somebody like Marcus Smart to kind of rein him in, because he seems to think irrationally so that it's his team and not the two J's. And let me put this on record now. I was flat out wrong about Jaylen Brown from the University of California. In terms of ceiling at this point, I feel like he may have surpassed Jayson Tatum.
Oh my God, Brian, all right, so I'm going to edit in right here. Everybody watch what Brian said to me months ago about Jaylen Brown. Here it is. So bummed about this Celtics season. They're such a good season. Jayson Tatum is emerging into a superstar. Jaylen Brown is like Scottie Pippen, they're really turning into something.
Jaylen Brown is overrated.
Yeah, exactly. And same with
Jaylen Brown is overrated.
Jaylen Brown is not overrated. He's extremely athletic. He's an excellent defender. He was a third overall pick. He comes with pedigree.
He's a B+ player, if that.
That's a pretty good player.
If you were to tell me Jason or Jaylen, I'm sorry, I'm shipping Jaylen out of town.
Yeah, me too. I would take Jayson Tatum over him too. It doesn't mean that Jaylen Brown is not also very good. I mean, he's only 23.
Right.
Adam, save us before you put the boxing gloves on. I mean, that's like debating Michael versus LeBron. You can't make that argument.
You can't make the argument that Jaylen Brown is also good.
Jaylen Brown is overrated.
I know. I heard you the first time.
He's good, but he's not worth the fanfare that he gets.
Why not? He's the second best player on this team, probably. I mean, him or Kemba.
I would go Kemba before I'd go Jaylen.
Well, Kemba's 30. I mean, Kemba's been around a while. He's built his game, Jaylen Brown is much more athletic than even Jayson Tatum. He can shoot, he can defend, he can run the floor, he rebounds. He's a really solid, good player. Is he ever going to be the best player on a championship team? No, probably not. But he can be the second or third option on a championship team.
I'd say third.
That's still pretty good, Brian. That's still a pretty good basketball player.
I never debated the fact that he was good. I just said that he's overrated.
Overrated by whose metrics? By whose estimation?
By
mine?
Pretty much all of Boston.
And now we're back. Brian, can you believe you said that nonsense?
Yes. Yes, I can. But I'm not saying Jaylen Brown will be a better player than Jayson Tatum, because I think the skill set, just based on shooting alone.
Yeah, polish. Jayson Tatum's polish is just absurd.
But there's more potential for Jaylen Brown than there is for Jayson Tatum, because I think Jayson Tatum's already there. Although we both know this, even though you're semi-irrational when it comes to your sports takes. Potential is the most dangerous word in the business, in any business for that matter. But I think Jaylen Brown honestly has more of a career path for, being a politician.
He was certain. Well, yeah, but I mean, when Jaylen Brown came in the league, he was raw, right? And that was sort of the criticism taking him at 3. And like you said, maybe he's not quite at Tatum's level right now, but he's a lot more athletic than Jayson Tatum. And Jayson Tatum is so polished. I mean, you could see him perfecting what he does, but I think we're seeing the player Jayson Tatum is right now. And we don't know what Jaylen Brown could be. I mean, if he can shoot like he's been shooting, he's unstoppable.
Jaylen Brown plays angrier and more assertive than Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum appears to be a finesse type player, whereas I think Jaylen Brown, his personality fits Boston perhaps better than Tatum, in the sense that Jaylen Brown is a junkyard dog, but not an arrogant junkyard dog like Marcus Smart. Please, Marcus Smart, if you're listening, I know you're not, but if this gets out to anyone, please stop shooting.
Come on. Marcus Smart spreads the floor, so maybe takes a few cringeworthy threes here and there, but he makes a lot of them too. I mean, he spreads the floor. You can't just have him stand out there and not shoot. I mean, that would just shrink the floor and make it harder for Brown and Tatum to get to the rim. If Jaylen Brown is listening, since you're calling out people, what's up, Jaylen Brown? I mean, that's my guy. I mean, that's my favorite player. A lot of it has to do with, he's a great player, of course, but most of it has to do with him off the court, his social justice chops and his, takes on education. I mean, I'm just a monster Jaylen Brown fan. So if anybody's going to come with that, let's trade him for James Harden. No, absolutely not. If you're coming to me with trade him for Karl Anthony Towns, it's tough.
A few weeks ago, I was on the James Harden train, but if you're going to tell me Karl Anthony Towns and get a legit stretch big man in the new game of basketball, because let's face it, the last legitimate big man is probably, I don't even know, who's the last traditional 5 that you can think of.
On the Celtics?
No, in the league.
Oh, what's his name in Detroit, or just got traded to the Cavs?
Andre Drummond.
Andre Drummond, yeah.
Yeah, but if you can get a stretch big like Karl Anthony Towns, who clearly knows his time is running out in Minnesota, just in terms of patience, then go get him. And again, I hate to bring up the Bitcoin, but it's, holding on to these assets doesn't do anything because it's all digital. At some point, you've got to go get something tangible.
I'll do Kemba. I'll do Marcus. Marcus Smart. I'll do all of the assets, all the picks, Romeo Langford, Time Lord. I'll do that for Karl Anthony Towns. I don't think I can do Jaylen Brown. I'm just such a huge Jaylen Brown. Maybe I'm being irrational.
But they're not going to take Kemba because Kemba's, let's face it, in basketball,
Three-team trade.
He's damaged goods.
3-team trade. Somebody will take him.
And I guess my next hot take for, Tony or whoever joins us in the future, maybe it's time to, maybe Danny's the one that stays, and maybe it's time to move on from Brad. Because the question is, can Brad handle, top tier talent? And
yes, he can. Yes, he can.
This is why I need
Mazz
back in the fold, because Mazz is a good foil to us. But I want to take a moment to give a shout out to Tony Mazz, because as I said earlier, he's the co-host of the #1 afternoon drive show in the Boston market, and that says something. And for him to have joined us on IA's Jock Talk, that's a coup for us. So thank you.
Absolutely. And for Tony Mazz and Jared Carabas and Chris Forsberg, who have joined us and had these chats with us. I mean, these guys are just doing it in their free time, just because they're nice guys. So thank you so much to them. It really does a lot for us. And if anybody out there is watching this and you want to be part of some of the TV shows we're doing in front of the camera, behind the camera, please be in touch. Send an email to social@iacil.org. We would love to have you. Everybody is welcome to take part. If you're interested in sports or not interested in sports, something else, we're always trying to make new inclusive content that includes people all across the parts of society as full members of society with opinions to be listened to and to be respected. So please, if you're interested in doing that, please send us a message.
And I think the important thing to remember is these guys are regular people too, and they've proved it by, as Ryan said, taking time out of their day. I mean, look no further than Tony Mazz himself. He just worked, an entire radio show and then joined us immediately following his show and really gave us about 45 minutes worth of good quality content. So we're thankful for the listeners. We're thankful for the guests, and keep it coming, guys, because we're here for you.
Absolutely. And thank you everybody out there for watching. We would love to hear from you. Send us a message. Take care, everybody. Happy New Year, and let's go Celtics. Let's go Bruins, and let's hope that the Red Sox and Patriots don't embarrass us too much.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Attention Massachusetts young adults. East Bridgewater-based nonprofit Independence Associates wants to work with you on employment, life, and social skills 100% free of charge over Zoom. Click Get Started at iacil.org.